Hello. How are you? Hey, Lawrence, how are you?
I am wonderful, Heidi. We are back at it. Where have you been?
I totally went MIA on you. Hey, folks, a month later, episode 14, Kids Health Series. And it's good to see you,
14.
Lawrence. Yeah, I took off. We took off on the epic family cross-country road trip, and we did it within days because I think last time recorded, I'm like, I'll see you in 2 weeks, Blair. And then I'm like,
Love it.
hey, sorry, I don't know where I am.
I love it.
I'm
I
in
love it.
Arkansas.
I'm dying to know how that went and get caught up with you today. But before we do that, I think it's really important that we do our ceremonial high five.
Okay.
This is going to be really
Okay.
fun. Ready?
Yes. Deux,
Mm.
un, deux, trois. Psh. What the heck?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Boom. All right. That'll work. That'll work.
Will it though?
The best in virtual high five. Brought to you by. Yes. Okay.
And back to our regularly scheduled. Okay.
It seems, guys. It seems like easy, but for some
It's
reason,
really crazy.
It's really awkward. I don't know what that is.
There's like
It's
little
elusive.
delays. Yeah.
There's something about it. It's very elusive.
Well, it makes us laugh. So that is
That's the most important thing, really. Laughter.
Yeah.
Laughter's best medicine.
Laughter's everything.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how have you been? Let's dive in here.
I'm doing good. I chose a nice moo today because I'm
Okay.
still in post road trip moo mode. Basically, my body is like, whoa, what are you doing? Slow your roll. And I'm trying to, we've been home just about a week and we're purging, we're readjusting, we're really on a schedule of supplements and vitamins again, which even though I brought them all, doesn't mean we did it. I couldn't find kombucha on the road anywhere. Like when I finally would go to major grocery stores, I'd see it, but it'd be so expensive. I'd be like, no. So we basically just layered up on, I think one evening we even had Dairy Queen for dinner because that was our only option.
There you go. There you go.
We enjoyed it, but even the giant by the end is like, I think I need some salad. So even he's on a little regimen right now. We're like, we did what we could do with the best circumstances. I think the best meals we had were the home meals at friend's house, my sister's house, home cooking. That's where we felt like energy. Other than that, sitting in the car, sedentary and then eating the junk, it took only just a couple days, but we started craving it. And then it was like, you could feel that hunger always wins, but it's like, we weren't even hungry. It was just like, ooh, let's get a donut or let's get a Slurpee. It was like the filters were all foggy. Everything was misaligned. But
yeah, that's going to happen. I mean, this is actually kind of cool to talk about, right? Because, you can lay out all these great plans for how things are going to be at home and when things are pretty controlled and, you are controlling the groceries and what you're preparing, or even locally, if you just kind of wander a little bit out. But when you're out on the road, you're at the mercy of what's available. And, and it can be like an eye-opening thing in terms of like what you experience, like how it can reawaken some cravings, how it can shift the mode pretty quickly into, your thoughts about food. For some people, it's, very powerful, right? I mean, if you've had experience with trying to get off of some of that food and then being reintroduced to it, that can be a challenge. But, at the end of the day, it's like, it's just a short little time. It's a road trip. It's family. There's all these other things. And I am all about like, hey, enjoy it. If that's what it's going to be, Dairy Queen for dinner, let's go,
Yeah.
Because the worst thing would be to stack on another layer of guilt or feeling too bad about, oh boy, what are we doing for dinner? Be thankful that we have some food, that we have nourishment. So
yes, I think that was the biggest thing. And that's what I'm most grateful for is we had those conversations. We would be like, okay, that was a lot of inflammation. Like we've been having a lot of pizza, let's get back carnivore. Let's just go heavier protein. Like we just, even though the choices, they weren't always the cleanest, we did the best with what we had. And then we're like, okay, now let's, run the stairs in the hotel, or like my son and I ran the stairs at Rushmore, or, we're tried to move it a little bit, but we were not blind to it. We all talked about it. When that one time they had their big icy, slurp, basically chemical frozen chemicals and color dyes. I'd like enjoy this. And then after like 20 minutes in the back seat, I'm like, was this a good idea, guys, to get you in the back seat of a car with the Slurpee? So you kind of run around a little bit and then get back in. But we openly conversed about it. It wasn't like it wasn't information we didn't know. So I think that was the healthy bit. It was like, even the Dairy Queen, I always bring it up because I'm like, they wrote that in their road trip journals. Like, we had Dairy Queen for dinner. Like it was crazy to them, but I was like, that's a memory. That's a memory imprint.
Exactly. That's just what it is. Because full disclosure, right? Since we're kind of opening up, it's kind of like a confessional booth here today.
Yes, maybe one morning.
I was up at the Dodger game Friday night, and you could find me in the stands. Great seats, by the way. Shout out to my client. You know who you are. I'll keep that client information confidential. But this wonderful client hooked me and my lady up with some wonderful seats at the Dodger game. And guess what? I had to partake. Not one, not two, but 3 Dodger dogs.
Ooh, you were balling.
Every bite of it.
And
some French fries and all of the things, right? When in Rome.
Yeah.
Not often did I get to a game, but you just sort of, build it into the things. Like, okay, all good. Yeah. Have a good time. Screamed my head off. Rooted for the Dodgers. They lost. We had a fireworks show afterwards, right? And this is kind of an important thing because, again, there are people that have everything perfect about their diet, but they're so stressed and wound up about it. Okay, mental health is suffering. They're emotional. Why? What's the trade-offs? There's always trade-offs. And so road trip with family, kind of connecting. You're being observant. You're able to converse. Now you can come back and regroup. Oh, by the way, speaking of like that shaved ice, I've been recently turned on to frozen watermelon, and then you grate the frozen watermelon. Heidi, have you had that?
No, but I have a whole watermelon we just got. Good call.
Look it up. Yeah,
nice.
Look it up if you want to do like a healthy, super clean shaved ice, frozen watermelon, and grate that up into a dish. And
I'm gonna do that.
Wow. So
do you know what I'm going to try too? I'm sorry to interrupt. Those big, huge aloes we have out here in Cali.
Yeah.
You trim them up and get the meat inside, and you freeze that, and you pour like tahini and stuff over that. Yeah. You just inspired me with more snackages.
I mean, part of this is it could be creative to find, new swap substitutions, tastes alike, healthier versions. They're all out there, So if you enjoyed something like, okay, what would be an alternative? Something like a thing that we had at Dairy Queen. What do we have? What do we like? What could we do to, make a homemade, healthier version of it, or whatever it might be. So there's always like a learning and a lesson experience. And look, when we were kids, Heidi, like I don't know about you. I shouldn't speak for you, but I was eating all the stuff.
I was Big Mac vanilla shake girl. Right? Like every other day.
And so I'm here, right? I made it.
I know. My 20s, though, I tortured myself in my mind. The guilt of what I would eat. I'd count every calorie going in. I'd watch fast food places go by what was my dream order. Like that kind of torture you put yourself in. I think that stress makes everything a little worse. I'd much rather just like enjoy it, let it go, and then let that moment pass.
I did a little A/B testing on the Dodge Dog with the Super Dog, which is the all beef version. They have an all beef.
They have.
Yeah, and that definitely got the thumbs up. But hey, let's make this fun. Let's have a good time.
Yeah. More sausage than lips and a-holes.
Mustard only, in case anybody out there you don't put ketchup on a hot dog. People.
God. I know. I'm the worst Chicago girl out there. Ketchup and pickles for me. I know. I did everything wrong. I lived Packers too, and I'm a Chicago girl.
I had to school the lady. I'm like, it's mustard only. We're doing mustard only.
Wow.
And
So you enjoyed yourself
Enjoyed
is the
myself.
theme.
And this is part of health, right? And I stress that health is, although I'm technically a nutritionist, right? Nutrition specialist, but health is more than that. Health is more than just food. It's family, it's laughing, you know, it's all these things that go into it. And there's always opportunities. And the big
Yeah.
thing is to like touch on like what was great about it, because I think that's important. Because again, then you're not hanging the cloud of guilt over like, why do we do this? You know, like nobody needs that, right? So you
Right.
made it a family thing, and it was fun.
Yeah. I think what set me apart from my other family, of our little family of 4 though, and you tell me that when you were at the Dodger game, did you have any beer
I did.
or alcohol?
I
See,
did. I got peer pressured into it.
God.
I wasn't setting out to it, but you know,
Okay. Yeah,
you're gonna have one. All right.
yeah. Well, I was
So
alone.
bad.
What was bad is I was alone in having mine. I
Yeah.
put a couple in the cooler. So at our first hotel, our
Yeah.
second hotel, and then at
Yeah.
our friend's house, and then with my mom, and then with my sister who has a wine bar. And I'm like, is it time for my shift wine? And she's like, I thought you don't drink anymore. And I'm like, when in Rome, you got to try it. She's like, you got to try your product.
And it's certainly,
and then I craved it.
Look, it's certainly, obviously, to put a more serious tone here.
Yeah.
Obviously, certain people, better none than one, right?
Yeah.
So it's these are just things that, again, life is gonna.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a.
Thank you for
test.
bringing that back, because I got tested and I had to tell myself one and done. Like, where are you going with this, Heidi? What are you trying to, whose party are you attending? Because it looks like you're the only one drinking. So
Yeah.
I really tested myself.
Mm-hmm. Win the day, a new day, and that's where it goes. So
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool.
That was fun stuff. So social media. Can I bring up your Instagram?
Yeah, let's talk about social media, what I've been doing as of late on Instagram. Yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah, you really been picking up the latest finds and research and topics when it's hot, because sometimes it's probably pretty quickly that the story comes and goes, or new information comes in. But if anyone hasn't checked out Kids Get Healthy USA, you have to put on there for Instagram.
Yeah.
He's got daily, sometimes multiple times a day, the hot topics. And, I screen grabbed a couple of them, but it really keeps you on your toes. You're really on it. You're really making sure you're aware of the latest research. So we don't hit too many hot points. I think we should cover a few of them, though.
Sure. Yeah. And so what I've been trying to do these last few months, I've just kind of wanting to get more active on social media. And one thing that I like to do, and this, Heidi, is I love reading research. I love knowing what's going on out there. Kind of a geek that way. So I thought, why don't I just archive, some of the recent papers, recent headlines that I'm seeing, I include article summaries, research paper summaries on these posts. And they're there kind of as a nice archive as well. So I can kind of go back and, refer to them as needed. I'll be doing more with, reels and video in the future. But right now I'm just kind of trying to stay active daily. So yeah, Kids Get Healthy USA. Still waiting for that inactive Kids Get Healthy Instagram to give it up and let me claim the name. But right now it's Kids Get Healthy USA. So check that out. And so you said you were looking at some of them, and we can talk about a few. I could just kind of riff on them, and what
the first
caught your eye.
Well, the first that caught my eye, because it's something, again, I'm going back to the road trip.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of my kids. They really hung out. Like, we made limits on, they had to do their journals, but that was sometimes hard for them to do. It's not like Miss Teacher Gal, they were writing the whole time, but it was an activity, but they were limited on their screen time and they didn't complain. But you had a very alarming thing about screen time and the health risks with that. Like how much screen time you have as a kid, you can't take it back as an adult. It's going to do what it's going to do.
And it is it's kind of that study right there, published in Pediatrics. It's the Childhood and Adolescent Television Viewing Study. They looked at what's called Metabolic Syndrome in mid-adulthood. They actually tracked from the 70s, right? And they observed, so basically people born in 72, 73, they observed these people until they reached the age of 45.
Okay.
So you're talking about a long-term study. And
TV kids, you mean? Like the observed?
Yeah,
Okay.
basically, well, they observed children from that time, and they found correlations with the amount of screen time and different health markers, right? So looking at cardiovascular, BMI, cardiorespiratory fitness, insulin resistance, hypertension, high blood pressure, all these things that make up what's called metabolic syndrome. And a couple of things to think about with this study, because it was very clear that, you know, the more screen time, the worse, which, right, like seems sort of obvious, right? But well, a couple of things that were interesting to think about with that particular study was that they found that switching up viewing habits in adulthood, so like when they became adult age, if some people switched up their viewing habits, it wasn't enough to alleviate the negative health effects that were caused in childhood.
Oh, that's what hit home. I was like, oh,
yeah, it
I
hit
thought of
home. Now that
myself.
sounds alarming, and it is, to be honest. But we have to also remember that these people weren't exposed to people like myself that could come in and maybe give some aggressive interventions. This was more like, as things played out over time in a natural setting through observational research like this, they're noticing that didn't seem to do much to undo. In other words, you probably needed a little something more than just switching your TV time up at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of damage can be kind of set in at an early age that becomes pretty difficult later in life. Not impossible, guys, but difficult, right? We know the numbers are a little bit bleak, but fortunately, it's like that's kind of what I do. I can kind of come in and really suggest pretty aggressive interventions, drug-free, surgery-free ways to get somebody to undo a lot of that damage. The other thing to note about that study is that we have to think back in the 70s, 80s, right? There were very limited options for screen time, right?
Right.
And
You
so
could
now
binge.
we've even got more. And, you know, and we also know that today's youth is on screens even more than kids in the 70s and 80s. So if this is looking at children of the 70s, what is that going to look like for, you know, children of 2000, 2010, right? So it's something to think about. I think it was, I thought it was worth posting to get that out there, the importance of that. Obviously, parents with little ones, like, try to get out in front of this. For those of you who you feel like, oh, it's too late, it's not. You know, it's not. This isn't like giving up hope, but it does show that, you know, prevention, early intervention, all this stuff is critical. I keep saying that, but it's true, right?
Oh, it's so
So
true.
yeah, screen time. That's a big one.
That's
That
a
is
big
a big
one.
one.
That's a hard pill. I did post
It
a meme
is.
recently that I loved that has this guy in this big computer, like, but it's like toddlers need Velcro to learn how to tie their shoes, but you give them a tablet and they're like, they know all the things to do.
Right,
And it's
right.
like, they're proud of it, but be careful. That's a health risk, I think, to get so.
Yeah, these
It's a lot
things,
of time that's for them to learn how to do that.
it's a lot of time. I will say, studies
Mhm.
tell us a lot about populations, but they're not the end all be all on individuals. Important to know, right? A study is just that, right? It's just a
That's a good
look
call.
at a population level, but
Yeah.
individuals are individuals, and they're all going to have their own unique challenges and issues. And yeah. Yep.
Speaking, well, with regarding children as patients for doctors and stuff, there was a post about patient portals for children. Like, that's when you log in and
Yeah.
the parents, there's like lower than 50% activity of parents doing this, like checking in on their children's like blood work, and they're just
Yeah,
not
yeah.
engaging.
Yes,
That was
exactly.
crazy.
Exactly. And that's you know, this is where there's resources available, and they aren't being taken advantage of. And I think that goes across the board. In this case, it was mentioning portal use, right? Where, you know, they were using it to kind of schedule, to look at test results, so complete forms. But there was a lot more to those portals that could be taken advantage of, like, you know, working with practitioners, taking advantage of some services, you know, getting some nutritional help, whatever it might be, like lifestyle information, things in there that more underutilized. One of the aspects too is like as children get older, involving them in this, and there's this kind of debate about how much access should a, say, 15-year-old have to their, medical information. And, my personal is, that the parents should be there until they're 18. But my advice to parents is, though, involve and give your child some autonomy in getting into something like that, like a porthole, and asking questions, and, get them to sort of be responsible caretakers of their own health, right? Certainly be a watchful eye, right? Because we don't know in today's day and age, what's the information. You want to be a gatekeeper, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's a lot of that kind of opens up a whole lot in that discussion of privacy and of autonomy and who's making decisions based on health. For me, 18 and older works in terms of some heavy health decisions. And truth be told, executive function in the brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25. But
wow.
Not that
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, we're still kind of forming our brains until our mid-20s. But that being said, it was an interesting little finding, right? That I think that it's underutilized across the board in terms of, hey, a lot of these things are funded by tax dollars and what else, and they're just underutilized.
Underused.
Even
Yeah, it was
like
surprising. The change talk. It was surprising to see it underused considering today's day and age. That's what I was really surprised about. You think parents would be in on it.
Something like Change Talk was a, platform that was brought along about 10 years ago that was there. This, I would say, is underutilized by healthcare professionals because it was there to kind of walk healthcare professionals and the public, really. Anybody can go into those portals and kind of do little role plays and Q&As that practice motivational learning. We did a whole episode about Change Talk and motivational learning, essentially for a quick recap. That is essentially trying to find out the internal motivations of your patient and getting them to come to a conclusion of what might be best through them. It's a very powerful technique to encourage real change. So it's different than saying, I'm the expert, I am telling you what to do. It's sort of like, tell me about you, tell me what you think you could benefit from with this. And it really involves them as a partner. And I think that when we are looking to change people, we have to partner up, we have to align up, we have to see them where they're at, we have to empathize. These are all important things. I'm in the business of actually trying to change people. And that's one of the hardest things to do. So am I changing people? Well, I'm trying to facilitate it. I'm trying to open them up to get to a place where they want to do this on their own. So yeah, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of things fighting for our attention.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of it too,
sure.
business schedules and things like this. But that was that was surprising.
I know that was super surprising. There's a couple here I would group together, but I do want to take time with each of them. But this one, what did you go? I think this is your latest one, or 9 weeks ago, or 9 days ago. But insulin is more predictive than glucose. Yeah. What was that about?
Yeah. So this one is interesting. So, fasting glucose, right? That's your blood sugar. And what they were looking at was what actually is going to cause the most problems with metabolic disease, right? What is actually a predictive marker? And you think like, oh, it's fasting glucose, high blood sugar. But that what they found was not a perfect, there's no perfect test, right? But that was not as predictive as insulin. So insulin is the hormone your pancreas makes to, lower glucose levels. And fasting insulin is that number of that insulin kind of behind the scenes doing that work. And what they found was essentially if that number's high, right? People that had elevated fasting insulin levels, that number correlated more to problems later on than just a peak at glucose.
I see.
It's
Okay.
so that yeah, that's so one of those things that I think is underappreciated. But fasting insulin, there's ranges, right, on these tests, and the
Mhm.
fasting insulin range goes up to about 22 or 23. So a common scenario would be, you request that test, say, from the doctor. The test comes back, maybe you have a 17. That's in range, right? The
Mhm.
doctor might say it's fine. But if we actually look at the literature, any fasting insulin above 9 is predictive 80% of the time of prediabetes. So it can be used as a pretty nice marker to get out in front of diabetes. And remember, there's about 100 million Americans pre-diabetic right now.
Mm.
So it's a big, big issue. So we can see that this reference range is much too high. It's just a reference range. An optimal range for fasting insulin would be under 8, and more like 4 or 5 would be like really a great target. So keeping that in mind, knowing what the optimal range is, and if you can get a read on fasting insulin, you're in really good shape. So
Okay, forgive me for my basics here. Fasting insulin, is that the insulin you produce when you're fasting?
correct. Yeah.
Oh, I
So
was like,
right, exactly. So if you're
okay.
fasted, right, in a
Okay.
fasted state, because once you eat
Okay.
food, if you're eating some food, especially food with carbohydrate, your
Little
pancreas is going to
spike.
start secreting insulin. So what we
Okay.
want to know is what's going on in the background in the absence of food, of fasting insulin.
Okay.
It kind of
All
gives
right.
us an idea
Mm-hmm.
of how hard the pancreas is working to sort of try to keep homeostasis.
Does this where omegas come in? Because you had me advise the giant on the omega 3s in the mornings, I think it was. Because it's
Omegas
been
can come
helping
in on.
keep his sugar levels
Yeah,
regular.
well, I mean, omegas have a variety of influence on that. They
Okay.
influence the cell membrane to be more receptive, more permeable, more receptive to the signal of insulin. So if insulin's there, kind of as a signal, it's a hormone, so it sends a signal to kind of unlock the door to the cell. If that cell is easier to open, that's great. And so omega fatty acids will do that. They'll bring down inflammation in the blood. Many benefits. So yeah, that's cool that he's seeing that.
Yeah, yeah. We both jumped on that.
Yeah.
Here we'll cut over. Well, this I just wrote it so big because I've been such an advocate for this for such a long time for children, but sleep. And
Yeah.
and the stat was it was just losing like a little over a half hour, like 39 minutes a
Correct.
day will affect your health. Just that. And children do not get enough sleep. Their school schedule, everything's ridiculous. Tell me more
Yeah.
about that. That was a big headline that I was like,
Yeah,
yes.
that one was I just put up yesterday. So full
Okay.
disclosure, I haven't read through the whole study, but the highlight was pretty grabby, and looking at the key highlights from the study was, when children lost just on average of 39 minutes of sleep, it was a significant difference in well-being. They didn't cope as well at school, reduced quality of life. You talk about academic performance, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
Sleep is, look, it's when you restore, it's when you repair, it's when you're able to go through those growth stages. I mean, we know as children, kids have long sleep cycles,
Mhm.
12 hours or
Mhm.
more. I mean,
Yeah,
when they're
yeah.
when they're babies, they're sleeping 18, 20 hours, right?
Yeah.
But school age kids, they need 10, 12 hours of sleep. And
Yeah.
so again, with screens that are affecting light, blue light exposure at night, kind of tricking the brain into thinking it's daytime, we're running into sleep deprivation issues.
Mm.
So it's worth looking at, and it
It's work.
affected
Yeah.
kids who had as little as 30 minutes less of sleep. So if we look at that, I would say 30 minutes, right? So 30 minutes more of sleep per night. Okay, that's 15 hours more sleep per month,
Mm.
right? So think
Mm.
about that's like picking up 2 extra nights of sleep a month.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's 24 more nights of sleep in a year, right? You see where that goes? That's
Yes.
that's 3 more weeks of sleep in a year. So it's
And
like,
that's
can
yeah.
you get 3 more weeks of sleep in a year? How do you do it? A half hour more of sleep would
That's
be
it.
great. That's it.
That's really anybody. So many people are lacking in their sleep. That's our just common theme in the house because Charlie's gonna be 13 soon. And she's the last sleeper up. And we're like, let her sleep. Whatever her body needs to do, just let her do it. We have the luxury of doing that right now, though, at least. And at least our school days start much later when we do go back to
Yeah.
school.
And
So
and
we
you
got to
know
be
what?
mindful of that
Let's
and go
not
to bed
jump over.
earlier.
Let's not
Mhm.
jump over this. Yeah. Because this
Yeah.
is actually important. Summer note is that summer is notorious for schedules to go all over the place, and sleep is one of them. Where then when school comes back around, it's all that much harder to get back
Get
into
on
that rhythm.
schedule.
So as
Yeah.
much as we can kind of establish consistent sleep routines, I think it's just an extremely healthy behavior to get
Mhm.
children into a regular bedtime. I mean, it's correlated over and over and over again with great health outcomes when you get a consistent, sleep pattern going.
Yeah. And it's easier on you parents. Trust me. Just keep it consistent. We tried that even on the trip. I asked you before we had left about that. And we kind of kept, depending on, the time changes, we really felt those because we were driving into these time changes and
Yeah.
back through them. We kept our sleep pretty consistent. It wasn't about like, I know the giant will want to get right back on the road. I'm like, make sure we have at least 10 hour or we go to bed early. I did bring melatonin. I don't know how your thoughts are on that, but just to keep us kind of on check
Yeah,
and to not be
melatonin.
too late or too early. We were trying to
We
just you had to
should
use it a couple times.
we should
Mhm.
probably do a deep dive on the issue of melatonin and the misconceptions in the media,
I would love
fear-mongering
to.
behind melatonin. I was actually talking about that this morning, so that would be a great
Okay.
full
We
episode
did
deep
a
dive.
little bit. We did a little bit because you had counted on be mindful what you're reading because their studies, it was unrealistic of us. Humans don't take in what their studies were saying.
Well,
So I
yeah,
think it was
melatonin,
something.
there's a lot to unpack with it. I mean, first of all, people
Yeah.
think of it simply from the sleep perspective, but there's so much more to talk about when it comes to melatonin,
Okay.
and when it comes to dosages and safety and
Okay.
again, media headlines that chase people away and scare people off. That would be actually a fantastic full blown episode on it.
We should do our own on that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
but
save that.
like I will say this, melatonin. One interesting fact about melatonin, people may not realize we associate with that nighttime, but a big chunk of our melatonin is made in the blood during the day from exposure of near infrared light. So people don't realize that.
Okay.
So sunlight in the day is going to help you bank melatonin. Sunlight in the morning, right, helps you bank serotonin, which converts into melatonin for later. So
Mhm.
if you want to get a better night's sleep at night, get light in the morning. And one of the things that was happening, say, during the lockdown, people for some reason felt like they were on house arrest or whatever. They weren't going outside, they were inside. Like you could walk outside and get sun. And what was happening was a ton of insomnia that results from that.
Mm.
Because if you're sort of in the dark all day long,
Mm.
literally and figuratively, I
Yeah,
suppose,
yeah, yeah. Another
then
episode.
you're not able to produce as much melatonin for later. There's a beautiful yin yang balance to the light dark cycles, and we need that light in the day to set us up for a proper sleep cycle at night.
Mm.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's funny is I know we're going to save for a whole episode, but the dosing, I was doing the dosing requirements and what they required of the 13-year-old was like, let's say 3 whole gummies. I gave her half of one and it did the job in like 20 minutes. It
What
just relaxed
melatonin
her.
does is it's a signaling molecule that's just like
Signals your body,
that's
right?
just saying this is time for sleep. It's not like a sedative where it's putting you down. It's a signal.
Right.
Um, and it helps set rhythm. It's very useful for jet lag in that reason. It's kind of
That's what we brought it for.
recalibrating. Yeah, if
Yep.
you're moving through
Giant even
time
took
zones.
it and he got the dose of the 13-year-old and was totally set.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that sleeping that was a good one. So
Yeah.
yeah, we kind of kept on track and coming home. We just missed our beds, but let's jump over to let's see. Well, that's
Got
hardcore.
one more in
Like,
us.
oh yeah, I got a couple. Yeah. Well,
Okay. Yeah.
like the global burden of diabetes, I guess we kind of hit into that, but that was we did with the insulin, but
Yeah, I mean
it's
that's
global phenomenon.
you're gonna see a lot of those posts, guys. I mean these keep coming out, and I in some ways it's just almost like the number doesn't. I think as people we don't really respond to just a big number. It's like it almost feels so big that we're detached from it. But yeah, global diabetes is looking to soar up to from we're at 529 million now up to 1.3 billion by 2050. it's sort of becoming, I mean, I mentioned the pre-diabetic numbers, just normalization. You know, we also, I think everybody out there knows somebody that's got diabetes, right? It becomes normalized to the point where I don't think people understand just how serious it is. Diabetes is like getting multiple things happening at once. You're talking about kidney function, nerve damage, heart health, higher risk of stroke, vision, neuropathies, these things. Like, it's bad news, and it's preventable. Type 2, I'm speaking on type 2, guys. Type 1, not much you can do if you're a type 1. But type 2 is certainly preventable, and even in many cases reversible. Although we can't say we cured it, we can sort of put it into remission, so where people aren't really clinically showing the markers of diabetes, even though they technically still have diabetes.
And kids more than ever, right?
More than ever. I mean, we didn't have type 2 diabetes among children, say in 1980. It was called adult onset diabetes. That was the word for type 2. The term was adult onset because kids didn't get type 2. That language has been long gone. We're now seeing this in hundreds of thousands of children. And so, yeah. And it is a substantially expensive illness to have. And we probably seen the headlines, or like I said, if you know people with diabetes, you're going to know about the cost of the medications, of insulin, all of these things. So, yeah, hope that hits home for some people out there.
I know. Well, this is another kind of heavy one because cancer, the C, is also on the rise with younger adults. It didn't say children; it said younger adults. It was like 20s, 30s.
So that's one.
But I think kids have been getting to. Okay,
looking at that was a post that I put up. Let me see where that one is at.
It must have been, if that was 2 days, it must have been 4 days, 4 or 5 days
so
ago.
This was, and this looked at from 1990 to 2019. So we're not accounting for the last 3 or 4 years. So
which was our heaviest years of takeout food and sedentary lockdown.
A whole lot of things, And so we're seeing big increases. It was 22% in the 25 to 29 age group. And in the next age group, the 30 to 34 age group, is at the highest level that we've ever been at. You know, and what that particular article that I linked, it was actually an opinion piece, but it was, you know, a really well-written opinion piece in terms of, like, you know, what it cited. And it really pointed at ultra-processed foods, you know, as sort of the culprit behind there. And so that could segue us into the ultra-processed food conversation. But
does that I think we should, because there's also I think it was your most recent one, lifestyle interventions to prevent heart disease. I think that would probably deal with not having ultra-processed food.
That does.
Okay.
That was this morning's post. That does touch on it. You know, that typical interventions and stuff are going to be needed. Obviously, you know, they were looking at multiple factors in there in terms of, like, you know, not only diet, but lifestyle, exercise. They were basically pointing to about 60 minutes of, you know, moderate to vigorous activity in the day for children for that. They do touch a bit on limiting exposure to processed foods. And then they look at some of the public health and social factors of, like, what can we do to try to limit marketing and, you know, advertising and these things to children. What brought to mind the ultra processed food, and I'm not sure, I did post about it, but it's been some time ago. And I'm thinking this can be a full episode, Heidi. We talked a little bit about this before today's show, but there was recently a report that came out where scientists were able to do a proof of concept where they put together a quote unquote healthy diet comprised of 91% ultra processed foods.
Wow.
And I want to kind of save this for a full episode, but I'm going to give you my quick opinion and kind of maybe set the stage as a little, like, teaser for the future when we talk more about it. But I mean, on one hand, I'm going to start with the positive. On one hand, we know that, like, a lot of people have limited resources, or, you know, that where they shop may not, you know, I mean, there are food deserts, for instance, where people's access to whole minimally processed foods is greatly reduced. And so they are sort of shopping at places that are going to be stocked, full of ultra processed foods. So on that level, a study like this can be encouraging in the sense that they can put together somewhat of a healthy diet, right? Using ultra processed foods, right? So there is something to be said for possible encouraging elements of that. And I will happily go into that in detail in a future show. But on
That'd
the
be
flip
a
side
good
of
one.
that, on the flip side of that, I'm a little perplexed at what that study was for, because they're offering it as this proof of concept, meaning they're really planning to do more with this. When we think of ultra processed foods, I'm thinking companies, I'm thinking people that want your money, right? And I've always said, if it's got a commercial, if it's on TV or the radio, it's a food, probably want to step away from it. I wonder where that's going to go. I wonder if that's because the type of message that puts that out. You have to remember, guys, that study, scientists had to use pretty sophisticated techniques to be able to build a diet that tested reasonably high on the healthy eating score, right? And that also could maybe be put to question of what that means. If we look at the meta-analysis on processed food, let me see if I can find this off screen. If I can't, that's okay. I can't find it right away, but let me see. Essentially, I'm gonna botch the actual data, but essentially, if you look at a meta-analysis of processed food, right, I think it was 43 studies, let's say. 39 of them showed adverse outcomes. Not a single study showed ultra processed food being correlated with good health. So if people are just left to their own devices to shop for ultra processed food, you're probably not going to end up in a good place. So it's a very cautious thing to not interpret that headline as, you really need to be very, very calculated and specific in doing that. That's why it took a team of scientists to put together a healthy diet using that. But
I think
real quickly, someone could look at that paper, look at the tables and the studies, look at the food that they were using, and try to mimic that, and then get by on a pretty good budget. So
I was just picturing I was picturing astronaut food, or things that they tried to get the nutrients and put it in a. Is that okay? Could that? It's like a mystery now.
There's basically what's called they're called Nova groups. They needed some way to be able to kind of classify, minimally to non-processed, slightly processed, processed, and ultra processed. And essentially, the further and further away you get from the natural whole food product, you move on down the Nova scale, right? And so as you move away, you're removing fiber, you're removing essential nutrients, so you're having to fortify back in. So you're taking good things out. You're trying to add back in what was lost. You're adding additives and fillers. Typically, they're commodity crops: corn, wheat, soy, things that are grown. These monocrops that are grown at mass scale. They're very cheap. This is what I call the illusion of variety, guys. You go into a supermarket, you think I got 60,000 products to choose from. 99% of those products revolve around a few ingredients, 4 or 5 ingredients: wheat, corn, soy. Right. So, and then it's kind of like they add in whatever flavorings and things and colors that they can to get you into this, hey, look at this diverse,
look at these choices,
array of food I have, right? Which is ironic, because if someone like me comes along and says, eat some protein and vegetables, I'm actually offering up over 100 food items, yet I'm being told
choices.
Protein and vegetables is restrictive, because if you want to count it as 2 things, that's a little sleight of hand, see? One thing, protein; 2, second thing, vegetables, right? You're eating, no, you're not. Asparagus is not the same as broccoli, not the same as cabbage, not the same as arugula. Chicken's not the same as beef, not the same as fish, not the same as eggs. If you actually look at nutrient density and, we want to talk about nutrient diversity, you're much more restricted eating more food, right? Because you're restricting to 4 or 5 commodity crops. Hot take, I know. But
I know that's good though.
that's the truth of it, right? That's the truth of it. It's the illusion of variety, and I think it's a really important thing to consider and think through logically. But so I would love to do a full thing on that paper alone and what might be going on there, because I feel like there's going to be more to come with that. That's what I'm sniffing.
You see something on the horizon.
Pattern recognition.
Well, there you go. We have a couple episodes in the can that, or not in the can yet, that we're going to do.
Foods.
Yeah. I'm off script a little. I have no script. But I wanted to share with you because we didn't talk beforehand, but I know you saw my post, and I think this is a perfect place to share this latest intel on the anomaly that is my grandma.
Yes,
she's still going. Grandma. Lawrence, she's still here. I put days ago, we thought hospice, she was taking her last breath. Nope. She's sleeping 23 hours. And the hour that she's present, she's conscious enough to say, I need good coffee, good coffee. I'm just so tired. I want good coffee.
This woman.
She barely takes a sip and then she's up and then she'll sleep again. She's still, what's happened is my grandma's 101 and she's fabulous. She spent her 101st birthday drinking Cosmos at a restaurant dressed up. She lives by herself in a 3-story condo, bathrooms top bottom. She's always moving. She socializes, and she lives by herself. My mom checks in on her here and there. She refuses to wear a life alert because it doesn't look good. So,
life alert, get your game up.
Yeah, no, really. They could be much cuter now. Bracelets, come on. I don't know how. Yeah. So anyway, she was partying with the neighbors, and I think she had a couple, but she went home. And she fell. And that was the thing. Everyone was worried about this fall that would happen and what would happen to her. She didn't have her life alert on and she had the gas stove on. And we don't know the time frame. We think 8 or 9 hours, but it was a long time because she fell asleep a little bit, woke up, fell asleep a little bit. It was the neighbor that found her, that checked on her and called the ambulance. And they found out it was a fractured hip. She wound up being in good enough health to do surgery, which kind of made us go, well, we weren't surprised, but friends were. And, but it's at the same time that she's social and she's got herself put together and everything, she's begging to go home. She wants to be reunited with her husband who's been gone for a long time. All her friends are gone. Like she is social and taking care of her body, but she's also like, I'm done with this dimension. So we're like, oh, maybe this is her calling card. Maybe this is the out. Nope. She pulled out of surgery and she was fine. Not fine, but she was coherent and talking to everybody and wanting to put her makeup back on and her lashes and everything. And so anyway, she went to rehab facility. That's where we started to lose her. Her mind said, I'm not going to do this anymore. My mom brought her makeup and only once she did her full face, but even that she started giving up on. And we're like, oh, this is the demise. So sure enough, things start shutting down on her. We were told this last week she had a stroke and she had an MRI to confirm it and half her face now droops. She absolutely no pictures now. And she, you can see the body shutting down, but this is my bit. We knew that was coming. And this is about 5 days now where there's no more interventions, no more feeding tube, no more. She's like, we're done. Let me just go out now, but she won't go out. She's literally just hanging in there. I think because her body was in such good shape.
Yeah.
But I do know the mind over matter. Her mind gave up. Her body started giving up. But I think there's something in there that doesn't want to go. Maybe one more party or I don't know what it is. But she's still with us as of July 30th. And when this goes up, whether she's still with or not, I'll leave that in the comments. But she's been basically told in the hospice wing of a hospital, she's too well for hospice. She needs to go to a rehab facility with hospice because they need the bed for people that are going to be revived or recovered, or they need the bed. So, they're going to move her tomorrow under hospice care. I know the mind is so powerful and I know she did move her body up until she fell. And that's 101 years old. Moving her body, washed her own dishes, portioned her food. She did all the things and she danced all the time. Just until I think 98 or 99, they took her license. And and she stopped kind of taking herself to the VA to go dance with the hot 70-year-olds.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, what do you
That
say
was a
to
long
that?
one,
Like
but
there's
I know.
it's incredible. There's a spirit obviously that's strong in her, a life force that just won't go out.
Yeah, she's going out guns blazing.
Yeah.
But did you see that? Do you see that
I,
relation of her mind giving up? Because
yeah, I mean, it's certainly like, we hear about this over and over and over again, and many people know about this in our own lives where, people, once their sort of will, if you will, is gone, that, I think that we're purpose-driven beings, that purpose is so important that if we can keep it, if we can hold on, but when we feel like our work is done here, I think we're checking out and the body will follow. I mean, biology rewards adaptability and function, and that mindset of like, I've got things to do, I've got,
she's got FOMO.
yeah, it's going to biologically, this has been proven that things work better when there's a purpose behind it. To touch on the point, this is an interesting thing that I learned many years ago from someone who worked in the artificial joint industry. He told me an interesting fact, and I'm not saying this is relevant to your grandma, because it may not be, but what I found fascinating is a big majority of cases where we hear about the elderly falling and breaking a hip, let's say, the majority of times it's the hip breaks and causes the fall.
Oh.
Yeah, that was surprising to me. And again, it might not be the case for your grandma, probably not, and because she was moving a lot, and so she probably had some pretty healthy bones. But this also shows you the level that it can get to, from osteoporosis to the point where you could just be standing and your hip gives out. It just literally breaks, and you fall, and they say, oh, he fell and broke the hip. But what actually happened was the hip broke and caused the fall.
That's juicy.
It is juicy. And another interesting thing, because you're kind of inspiring some of these thoughts.
I thought I would.
One of the single best predictors of longevity is your ability to get up off the floor unassisted. And so something to consider for those of you who have like elderly parents or elderly grandparents, and you want to give them, they're interested in activity, have them practice that, and safely, right? So be there.
Getting off the ground.
Getting them on the ground, be there with them, see how well that they can get up on their own. Practice that. If they can still do that well, encourage them to just do that every day. It's actually a big deal, the ability to just get up. The other thing is balance. And so again, safely, guys, like practicing standing on one foot, maybe holding onto a rail and one foot, then the other foot. When you practice balance, you're also really incorporating the neurological system, the brain. There's all of these added benefits, synaptic firing and all this stuff that's really great. So, but bless her heart. Wow.
Do you think if she is sipping that coffee, is that keeping her alive?
Apparently she's running off.
Really?
I know, man. It keeps me alive.
Well, do you know the insight I was picking up on? She used to also have a gym membership. She had a very good gym. It was Elmhurst. They have a great gym there.
Yeah, my grandma lived in Elmhurst, by the way.
Oh, she was right across the street there. So she'd have her coffee clutch. And of course, there'd be coffee cake and things. But she did work out. She swam and she went the track and did things. But then they all socialized after for hours. And so I think having the coffee, she smells it. She's like social. Like she's like, oh, it's like coffee clutch time, even though she'll pass back out. I wonder if they're delivering her coffee and just it's a memory thing, or I don't know. But I was picking up on, I'm like, she loved her coffee time. Like, let's have coffee because that means we're going to talk and hang out.
Right, exactly. It's ritual.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
It's ritual.
Oh, I just loved sharing that. And I love sharing the journey, but I am kind of having this funny moment of like, well, that was like an in memoriam almost, and she wasn't gone. It was like, bless your transition, Grandma. And
hey, you know what?
5 days later.
Yeah.
Like, she's
Well,
still here.
my grandma on my mom's side, quick funny story was that, well, at least funny in our family. I mean, maybe we have a little bit of a dark sense of humor, but for many years, my grandma wasn't doing well, and my mom would call me up. You got to come back for Christmas. This is gonna be Grandma's last Christmas.
the last
And I come
Christmas.
back. I'm like, okay, I gotta go back. It might be Grandma's last Christmas, and then the next Christmas, and the next Christmas, and the next Christmas. So that last Christmas talk lasted like 9 or 10 years.
No, we've been there.
And
We've
she
been there.
wasn't ready to go. And there were some significant health challenges where me knowing what I know, I'm like, I better hop on a plane. And, I'm like, Ma, she doesn't want to go.
Isn't it
It's
great?
just simply not in the cards right now. So, and, in the case of my own grandma, it was, she loved to laugh. She had an amazing kind of outlook on things. She was outspoken about a lot of things. She had a lot of passion and a joy of life, and she liked visiting with friends and family, and that keeps you going. That really does. And she had a brother, like her brother Jimmy lived to like 100 and something, 103 or something.
Wow.
So
yeah.
These are, so cool. What this is, these people that are in that age range, it's a dying breed. It's an incredible, I mean, the wisdom and the life wisdom and everything that your grandmother has been alive to see. It's unlike any, I mean, that is a lifetime that is considerably unique when you think about the 20th century and the amount of change that these people saw. So they're exceptional human beings. And I know, Heidi, you've always celebrated her and posted about her and her
even though she can be she's super fabulous, but she's got a wicked tongue too. And she's got people in the family that when her sister passed, my grandma wasn't in her. When my grandma's sister passed, my grandma was not in her obituary. Like, that's how estranged they were even. But get this, the daughters, her 3 daughters, they weren't speaking, some of them. And I'm like, gosh, we got to reunite these daughters. Maybe she'll let go. The 2 daughters started speaking and visited her together. And that was the starting to go. But the one still in Mexico, I'm like, you got to get over there. Like, we got to get the 3 sisters together. I'm so happy the Giant got to meet her last year and kind of see what I'm talking about. There's this tongue in cheek, like, what did she just say?
Yeah.
But you're also like, but she's too sparkly. I'm like I'm hypnotized. So the kids saw her, but this visit, I knew they couldn't. I'm glad I was in town but she was already in the rehab facility where she did the makeup was off, the eyelashes were off, and hearing aid was lost. So they're like, we're done getting these for her. So yelling and like, it wasn't my grandma. And she was just this is what she was like kind of like, I can't believe I'm still here. And that was the saddest bit. So I feel like those goodbyes every year before that were the goodbyes. So the detachment has already happened, but we're just wishing her well. But I'm just sending, it's such a pretty story to people.
All my love out to that woman, and that's just a beautiful thing to think about. I mean,
I encourage. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying it's a fascinating thing. That journey. I'm always talking about child nutrition and young and everything at the start of life, and when we can think about that journey to the end and all that's in between. And
she always made her foods. She didn't eat out a lot. Like, there's just fascinating stuff about her with that. But I do hold it in my heart, and I teach the kids and others that it's testament of keeping your body moving, not giving up. The Giant has some family members that just give up, and then their body starts giving up, and they're like, well, I'm old. I'm like, but are you though? They say it's what is old,
limiting thinking.
Limiting
thinking. I would say, like, I mean, one of the things that hit home for me about this whole idea of what is old was this idea that, you have like person 1 who's 17, has 1 more day left. We don't, may not know that, right? And then you have person B that's 80 years old that's got another 20 plus years. Which one of these individuals what is old? What is that? What?
You're right.
You're 1 day left in your life.
Yeah.
You're 20 years left. Like, is it our age? At the end of the day, it's fast for all of us. You make it to 101 or it's 20. relative to, right? We're getting deep today on the
I know.
but here's where we start like, whoa, man. Like, but it is so this idea of it's a mindset, I mean, we're in this category where, like, I remember being a kid and thinking 50 years old is, and I'm doing my countdown now. If anybody follows my Instagram, I put in my
I know. I'm
my
excited
Instagram
for
stories,
you.
my countdown to 50, and it's what am I at? 380 something days now away. Am I old?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. What is old? You're
What
right.
is it? What is it?
Wow. I know. That's it. Well, there's another show.
What is old?
Yeah. I just, before I I have to throw this out there to really blow people's minds, because this is go against all the things that even I talk about online. My grandma's had like flu shots, and all those shots, not all the crazy, one of the recent one, she's got all of that too, because she has crushes on doctors. So whatever they say. And here she is. So we can't use those arguments. Still a
she's
testament.
impervious.
She wanted to be there. She wanted to, and she was there. So on that note,
let's drop the mic on that imperviousness, that force field she has around her.
Yes. And was for, I think we go on so many other things with that. But what I do wanted to finish up and recap and say, because I didn't say at the beginning, we are currently trying to detox. We're just getting back from our road trip. Healthier choices. We talk about our inflammation. No, we're not having that inflammation tonight, and no dairy, and no, we're talking about it. But I myself am going to be getting myself ready for a green coffee enema. Because I'm getting down deep, because for some reason these guys are still regularly working, but my old ass is
let's
like,
go.
I'm going full throttle today. So I'll let you know how that goes.
I love it. There's so much. This is so cathartic. There's so much sharing. I don't have an enema coming up to share, but
okay.
I'd love to disclose something else.
And why we're vitamining and cleaning out what we've been eating is for at least 14 days, because I want to bring in another heavy metal little detox, and then after 30 days a little bit more parasite. So we're going all in for the summer. So stay tuned for those.
Hit me up. Hit me up, Heidi. You got,
Oh yes, we'll
chlorella,
do detox episode.
Fun things. Yep. There's lots of ways to help
episode.
that out.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you. This went longer than I thought.
Thank you. We're good for an hour. We're good.
That's my grandma. She wanted to be involved. Put me on TV. Oh, her biggest thing is too, she still says it even on her deathbed, I lived longer than Betty White.
Oh.
So they had around the same birthday.
Shots fired. They had the same birthday?
Around. No,
oh my God.
I don't even think it was close. Well, she just always compared, because I met Betty White. So that was our little shtick. She was always like, how's Betty? How's Betty? And then she's like, Betty White died. Woo! I lived longer than Betty.
Oh God.
That feisty little woman. Oh, cheers, man. Lorraine. Cheers, Dragon Lady.
Lorraine.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We're going to close out with the Kids Get Healthy. Beautiful commercial trailer. Please check out kidsgethealthy.com. You can reach Lawrence at kidsgethealthy.com. You can check out my link tree. You can see all our playlists on Rumble or on my YouTube playlist of Kids Get Healthy, and check it out. We have 13 other episodes for you to check out, and hopefully today's Rumble Jumble you got into. So it's good to be back. Thank you again, Lawrence, for playing.
Thank you, Heidi. Always fun.
And we will see you 2 weeks. I'm not leaving.
All right, back at it.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.